The sun was still high, casting a cruel glare over Copper Ridge, when the silence of the street was broken by the sound of steady boots on hard-packed earth. Silas Grimm's pulse quickened the moment he saw her figure in the distance, but it was too late. His past had come back to claim its due. 7 years ago, he and Tobias Kane had destroyed a family for nothing more than a pocketful of silver and cheap whiskey, selling off a young girl like cattle. Now, that girl was back, and she was nothing like the frightened child they'd once dragged from her burning home. She stopped in front of Murphy's saloon, the dusty wind tugging at her long, dark hair that was bound beneath a battered hat. Her face was tanned and weathered by the sun, but was a thin, pale scars on her neck that spoke the loudest markers of suffering and survival. Her clothes were plain, a worn leather vest over a faded shirt, torn denim trousers, and boots scuffed from endless miles of hard travel. But it wasn't her scars or clothes that sent men stepping away from the windows and doors. It was her eyes, cold, unflinching, and sharp as a blade honed for one purpose. Silas's fingers twitched toward the pistol on his hip, but some part of him knew better than to draw. She wasn't here for a duel. This was a reckoning. The saloon doors groaned open, and out stepped Tobias Kane, lanky and hollow-eyed, his confidence draining from him the instant he recognized her. His mouth opened, but no words came, only the widening of his eyes as he understood that the ghost they'd buried in their memories was flesh and blood before them. The girl they'd sold was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned to survive in a world that wanted her dead, and who had learned how to make men like Silas and Tobias fear the dark. She didn't draw her gun. She didn't need to. The power in that moment belonged to her. The town seemed to hold its breath. Even the horses tied nearby shifted uneasily, ears flicking at the scent of violence hanging thick in the air. Her voice, when it came, was low but carried across the street like the crack of a whip. "Hello, Uncle Silas." Silas's face drained of color. The words, heavy with contempt, echoed louder than any gunshot could, and when she spoke again, the weight of 7 years fell upon him. "I'm here for my inheritance." Every man watching knew exactly what she meant, even if the words were dressed in civility. The child they declared dead had returned, and the lies they'd told were about to be stripped bare. Silas remembered the night, the flames, the screams, the way they boasted afterward their cleverness. The memory made him sick now. Tobias tried to find his footing, voice cracking as he stammered, "Now listen, girl, you've got us confused." She cut him off, her gaze steady. "Born in Kansas. First kill at 16. Scar on your left hand from a bottle fight in Denver. You wear your left boot tighter because of the bullet in your ankle. And you always check over your shoulder before you walk into a place because you know someone, somewhere, is coming for you." Tobias froze. If she knew these things, what else had she uncovered? Silas tried to sound tough, but his words rang hollow. "You think you can come in here and threaten me? I own half this town." But his eyes betrayed him, darting toward the sheriff's office. She followed his glance and let out a low, bitter laugh. "You're waiting for your sheriff?" She reached into her vest and drew out a tarnished badge, tossing it at his feet, where it hit the ground with a hollow clink. "He won't be coming. Turns out, lawmen don't like finding out their pay came from murderers and slavers." Tobias's mask cracked. His voice trembled. "What do you want? Gold? We got gold. Silver, too. Whatever it is." She stepped closer, and the scars on her wrists, the permanent reminder of their cruelty, were plain to see. "What I want is for you to remember what you said when you sold me. $50, wasn't it? Said I wouldn't last a year." The memory hit Silas like a hammer. He remembered the child's sobs, her pleas, how he and Tobias had laughed over their whiskey afterward. There was no laughter left in him now. Her voice dropped to a whisper, colder than the steel at her side. "The men you sold me to, they're dead. Took me 4 years to find them, and 3 more to find you." Her hand hovered over the worn revolver at her hip, but she didn't draw. She didn't need to. The storm she brought with her had already begun. The heat hung heavy over Copper Ridge, the kind of heat that made sweat bead beneath collars and tempers short. The sound of boots on sun-baked earth carried down the street, steady and unhurried, like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Silas Grimm stood frozen on the saloon's porch, his throat dry as dust. He'd always known this day might come, but he convinced himself he had time. Time to prepare, time to hide, time to forget. Now, as the figure approached, he realized time had run out. She stopped a dozen paces from him, her shadow long in the afternoon sun. Her hat shielded her face, but when she lifted her head, Silas felt the weight of her gaze. Those eyes, cold, steady, and full of purpose, belonged to someone who'd survived the kind of darkness that left no room for mercy. She wore a battered vest over a faded shirt, trousers tucked into worn boots that spoke of miles traveled with no destination but this moment. Scars marked her neck and wrists, pale lines against tan skin, as if her body itself told a story of everything she'd endured. Silas felt his hand twitch toward his sidearm, but he stopped himself. Drawing would be a mistake. This wasn't a shootout. This was judgment. The saloon's doors creaked as Tobias Kane stepped out beside Silas, his grin vanishing the instant he recognized the woman before them. His face drained of color as the memories surfaced. The fire, the deal, the girl they'd sold like livestock. But there was no girl here now. Only a woman who'd come to collect what was owed. She spoke, her voice low but clear. "Did you think I wouldn't find you, Silas?" The words cut through the stillness, and a murmur rippled through the gathering crowd. The people of Copper Ridge drifted from doorways and windows, drawn by the tension that crackled between the three figures in the street. Her hand rested on the grip of her revolver, not raised, not threatening, just there, a reminder. "Funny thing about $50, she said. "It doesn't buy much loyalty when someone else is offering $100 for the truth." Tobias broke first. He bolted for his horse, but his escape ended before it began. A rifle's barrel caught the light, leveled at his chest by a man in a dust-streaked coat. The stranger's voice was calm, almost friendly. "Lady said stay put. I'd listen." Silas's heart sank. The badge on a man's vest glinted in the sun. Deputy Marshal Clayton Pierce, a federal lawman. The trap had been set, and he'd walked right into it. "She didn't come for revenge," Pierce announced, his voice carrying to every ear. "She came for justice." The woman nodded. "Marshal Pierce has been following the trail of missing children across 3 territories. Amazing what happens when you give a lawman more than rumors." The deputy kept his rifle steady. "We've been chasing this ring for a long time. Your names kept coming up. Grim. Yours too, Kane. But it's hard to find witnesses when folks who speak up tend to disappear. Until now." Silas's mind raced. He searched for an out, but every alley was blocked. Every face in the crowd was watching. By dawn, they'd all know the truth. "You can't prove a damn thing," Tobias barked, but the fight was draining from him. "It's her word against ours." "A survivor's word," she shot back, her voice sharp as broken glass. "And the word of every piece of evidence I've gathered." From her saddlebag, she drew a worn leather folder, thick with papers. She let fall at their feet, scattering documents across the dirt. Bills of sale, shipping records, letters in Silas's own hand. Proof. The life Silas had built on the suffering of others lay exposed for all to see. Pierce didn't hesitate. "Silas Grimm, Tobias Kane, you're under arrest for trafficking, murder, and conspiracy." Desperation took over. Silas went for his gun, hoping for a miracle. But the woman's draw was lightning quick, the crack of her shot echoing down the street. His revolver flew from his grasp, 2 fingers with it, and he fell to his knees, howling in pain. Before the shock faded, Tobias lunged. He seized a girl from the crowd, a blade at her throat, his eyes wild. "Back off, or she dies." Same as the brat should have. The townsfolk froze. The marshal couldn't risk a shot. The girl whimpered, blood trickling from where the knife bit her skin. The woman stepped forward, calm, unshaken. "Let her go, Kane. This ends with you and me." "No." Tobias's hand trembled, his voice cracking. "You stay back. I'm not hanging for this." Another step, and he pressed the blade deeper. "I'll kill her, I swear." Her voice softened, chilling him to the bone. 7 years ago, you said fear was the only language I'd understand. You said I'd beg for scraps. You were wrong. In a blur. She dove behind a water trough. drawing Tobias's attention just long enough. The marshal's rifle fired, and Tobias spun away from the girl, the knife falling from his grip as he hit the dirt, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The girl fled, sobbing as the townsfolk rushed to help. Silas knelt in the dust, cradling his mangled hand. Tobias lay groaning, defeated. The woman stood above them, her face unreadable. Pierce snapped the cuffs on them both, efficient and sure. Tobias moaned as the irons bit his wrists. Silas stared at nothing, broken. She crouched beside Silas, voice low. "Do you remember what my mother said just before you killed her?" His eyes widened. Those words, the curse he'd tried to forget, rang in his ears again. "My daughter will find you, and when she does, you'll wish you'd never been born. She said you laughed at her." The woman's smile was cold. But sometimes a dead woman's promise is stronger than anything the living can offer. Pierce listened as she went on, her voice steady. 43 children. That's how many I traced through your network. 43 families destroyed. And now it ends. And with the sun sinking behind Copper Ridge, it finally did. The blistering heat of late afternoon hung heavy over Copper Ridge. But it wasn't the sun that made the townsfolk uneasy. It was the quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Every eye was drawn to the street, where a lone rider sat tall in a saddle, her silhouette framed by the fading light. She dismounted with calm purpose, boots raising small clouds of dust as she approached. Silas Grimm's throat tightened as he watched her. He'd told himself for years this day would never come. But here she was, the shadow of a past he'd tried to bury, walking straight toward him. And she wasn't alone. Behind her, a federal deputy stood ready, rifle resting across his chest, the kind of man who didn't take orders from the likes of Silas Grimm. Her voice, when it came, was clear as a bell. Funny how $50 doesn't buy much loyalty when someone's willing to pay double for the truth. Tobias Kane's nerve broke before the words finished leaving her lips. He turned to run, but a rifle's barrel blocked his path, held steady by the deputy. "Best stay where you are," the lawman said, voice low but firm. Silas felt the walls closing in. All his power, all his influence in Copper Ridge, was crumbling beneath the weight of the truth marching toward him. The woman's hand rested on the grip of her revolver, not threatening, just waiting. The townsfolk had gathered in ones and twos, filling porches and doorways, watching the scene unfold. Some clutched weapons. Others simply stared, drawn to the reckoning they sensed was at hand. She pulled a thick folder from her saddlebag and dropped it at Silas's feet. Paper spilled into the dust, records of the life he'd tried to hide. Contracts, letters, ledgers, proof of every child stolen and sold. 7 years, she said softly. 7 years of chasing every scrap of evidence, every name, every lie. Tobias, desperate, found his voice. "You don't know what you're doing. There are men bigger than us, powerful men. When they hear about this..." She cut him off with a smile colder than steel. "Let them come. I was 12 when you took everything from me. Today, I'm not alone. I'm standing here with the law, with proof, and with the families of the children you tried to erase." The deputy nodded, lifting his voice for all to hear. Grim. "Kane, you're under arrest for trafficking, murder, and conspiracy." Panic surged in Silas. He reached for his gun, his last, hopeless gamble. But she was faster. Her revolver barked once, and Silas's weapon spun from his grasp. 2 fingers gone with it. He fell, clutching his ruined hand, howling in the dirt. Tobias lunged into the crowd, grabbing the girl and dragging a knife to her throat. "Back off, or she dies, just like that Blackwood brat should have." The girl sobbed, frozen with fear. The deputy hesitated. No clear shot without risking her life. But the woman didn't flinch. She stepped forward, steady as ever. "Let her go, Tobias. This isn't between you and her. It's between you and me." Tobias's hand shook, blade drawing a thin line of blood on the girl's neck. "I'll kill her." "You said fear was the only thing I'd understand," she murmured. "You were right about fear. I know it better than anyone. But today it's your turn." She moved, fast, diving to the side, drawing his eye just long enough for the deputy's rifle to crack. Tobias spun, his shoulder torn open, the knife falling uselessly from his fingers. The girl fled to safety, weeping with relief. Silas lay whimpering. Tobias bled and gasped in the dirt. The woman stood above them both, her face unreadable as the deputy secured their shackles. "You'll hang for this," Tobias hissed, but even he didn't believe it anymore. "You don't understand. There are others. They'll come for you." She turned, addressing the silent crowd. "These two were only the start. There are more, and I have the names, the routes, the records to find them. 7 years I've gathered it all." From her saddlebags came a second folder, thicker than the first. The deputy took it, understanding the weight of what he held. This is enough to tear their whole network apart. A rumble of hooves broke the silence, riders approaching fast. A dozen men crested the hill, led by a figure in black, silver hair gleaming in the light. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. "Judge Crane," the deputy muttered. The woman's smile was bitter. "He's here because Silas warned him. But it's too late." Crane dismounted, gaze sweeping the scene. "Miss Blackwood, I admit I didn't expect this. When I heard a child escaped, I assumed the desert finished what we started." "Sorry to disappoint," she replied. His threat was thinly veiled. "You can't stop this. Even if you destroy us, others will take our place. Kill us, and you only clear the way for worse." She shook her head. "You're wrong. While I hunted you, I found allies. Marshals, rangers, survivors. They're coming now." And they were. More riders appeared, lawmen from across the territories, surrounding Crane and his men before they could react. "You have no jurisdiction," Crane spat. A marshal dismounted, flashing papers. "You're no judge anymore. Your warrant signed. Washington decided to save itself, not you." Crane's last hope crumbled. The law closed in. His network, built over decades, collapsed in an afternoon. As the prisoners were loaded into wagons, the woman stood quiet, watching it end. The deputy came to her side. "What now?" She glanced at Copper Ridge, at faces forever changed by what they'd seen. "There are other networks, other monsters. I aim to find them." And as she rode from town, the people watched, silent and awed. Justice had come, not in the form of a badge or a lawman, but in a woman who refused to be broken. In the months that followed, headlines told of trials and convictions. The network she exposed was gone. The families of 43 children found peace at last. And when new horrors arose, whispers spread of a rider who hunted the predators and never stopped until justice was done.